Hello, tonight we're here to talk about the initiatives and reforms in the Arizona Constitution. We'll start out by what is an initiative? It's a constitutional initiative, allows citizens to make changes to the state's constitution on their own. In other words, citizens can bring forward changes that they want made and bring them up to vote for the ballot. How does the process work? Any registered voter in Arizona can draft a proposed amendment on a form supplied by the Secretary of State. So they go to the Secretary of State, they fill out the form on what their idea is, and that's how the process starts. After the draft, it must be filed with the Secretary of State and then circulated among registered voters. So this part's the tricky part. So you must get signatures that equal 15% of the number of voters who cast ballots in the preceding election. But in all actual, you should get 20% more signatures because many of them will be invalidated. So if you only get your 15% and you have a bunch of invalidations, it's never going to make it to the next stage. The reason the signature process was put into place was because it was intended to filter out frivolous or um, uh, things that have no support or lack of supporting. So the signature process gets them through to the next stage. If the secretary, um, and actually in the signature stage is when a lot of the initiatives fall away because they don't get enough signatures, so they don't ever make it to the next stage. The next stage would be if the secretary determines there's enough votes and the proposed initiative will go to the voters and appear on a ballot. Once the people will get to vote, and if more yeses than nos, then it becomes part of the Constitution. And that's how initiatives work. The next one we'll talk about is a referendum. The referendum is the most commonly used method for altering the Arizona Constitution. And that is the process is when, in contrast to the initiative, the legislature is the ones that bring the process forward. And then the House and the House and Senate must independently approve the proposed change by a simple majority, which is different than our U.S. Constitution, which takes 3/4 and 3/4 of the houses, the legislature. Once the Arizona legislature approves the proposed amendment, it goes to a vote of the people. And on this particular one, once the people vote for it, the governor cannot veto an approved measure. So nearly 1/4 of the constitutional referendums have involved tax, debt, or spending issues. Some have altered the basic structure and operation of government. Some examples of that was Taft's veto in 1912, and that changed the method of execution in Arizona. Another example would be in 1950 when they altered the size and composition of the Arizona State Board of Education. So they do get through and they work. The statutory initiative allows citizens to propose and write laws, except for the percent. It follows the same process of an initiative. A statutory referendum enables the legislator to refer ordinary laws. A legislator can send the proposal reform to the governor or to the people. What's interesting about that is it, in essence, the statutory referendum transfers the governor's veto powers to the voters. And historically, only 26 proposed statutes were sent to voters. So that tells you a lot about how that works. So some cons of initiatives that have been pointed out are initiatives are costly, therefore they can be co-opted by special interests. Um, it the grassroots companies, they have a harder time getting initiatives on the ballots because they're not well funded. They're smaller groups. They don't have the money for the marketing. And once citizens do this is all on their dime. The legislator don't help with the legal processing. They don't help with the making up of the words, the contracts. It's all done by the citizens. So that's why it could have a con, because you get the special interest people in there who have the money to push forward initiatives that are maybe one-sided. Initiatives don't have to make compromises like a legislator. Usually it's all or nothing. So it's going to go to vote. It's going to be yes or it's going to be no. Unlike in the legislature department, it'll go back and forth. It'll go through the state, then the House, and then they might send it back to the state to make some changes, and then it might go through on condition with these changes in it, or they could send it all the way back to start over again, but it's not necessarily a nope, we don't want it, good, take it away. So that is that's one con of an initiative over a referendum. Spending initiative, citizens create for school and indigenous healthcare. Sometimes they don't consider the whole economic picture. They only see what that school or what that healthcare company needs and how it affects everything in the state and their citizens. So they may not have done the legwork or looked into it as much. Therefore, that could be a con. Some pros is it's a direct democracy. Procedures gives citizens a say. That's not every state don't have that, so it does give them a say to put stuff straight in and get it passed. Initiatives compel governments to be more attentive to citizens concerns. You get these initiatives through and the government sees them and it spikes their interest in what the people are or wanting or needing or they think they need or want. And then that can fall into the political hands and what they want to for campaigning and for just bringing attention to the government. Initiatives enable politically powerless groups to bring their case to the group. So I see that as like I don't know, there's a good example of what was it? The women's votes got through on initiatives, to give women's the right to vote. There was uh the merit to what was it? The merit judges, to get merit judged so that you could have a nonpartisan group of lawyers. So they go over the judges' qualifications and they submit the most qualified people to the governor before he picks the judges. So there's quite a bit of benefits to initiatives, not just referendums. And then lastly, so the Arizona Constitution supports a direct democracy. And so a direct democracy refers to the decision making or direct vote, a proposal, law, or politician um, uh, by the electorate rather than the or representative in a state. So in other words, all voters are coming together. And that's evident here in the first couple of sections. In section 1, when the Senate House of Representatives talks, and it says the Senate House of Representatives reserves the power to people. I love that saying. It also says the legislative authority of the state shall be vested in the legislature consisting of a Senate and a House of Representatives. Here's my favorite part. But the people reserve the power to propose laws and amendments to the Constitution and to enact or reject such laws and amendments at the polls. That's a lot of power for the people. That makes them feel part of something. I mean, to have that kind of um that direct democracy, and this supports the Constitution and the initiative and the referendums that supports the whole idea of direct um, democracy and being able to do it. And then it goes on to say initiative power. The first of these reserved powers is the initiative. Under this power, 10% of the qualified electors shall have the right to propose any measure. That's That's very strong. Any measure, like any measure. And then 15% of them shall have the right to propose any amendment to the Constitution. That gives more citizen power to be able to have a say in their government and their local government and their state and what's happening. And then the referendum power is very long, so I only gave a portion of it here, but it's emergency measures effective date of acts. The second of these reserved powers is the referendum. Under this power, the legislature or 5% of the qualified electors may order the submission to the people at the polls. So they can actually just give it right to the people at the polls instead of going to the government and going to the governor. And then it goes on to state a whole lot more, which I didn't put in here. But of any measure or item, section, or part of any measure enacted by the legislator, except laws immediately necessary for the preservation of the public peace, health, or safety, or for the support and maintenance of the departments of state. Those are the ones that are going to go directly to the government because they need it enacted immediately rather than wait for the next general election or to put it to the polls. So in all, these are describing the initiatives and the referendums in the Arizona state constitution and the benefits, the pros and the cons, and some of the ways that it has helped. Thank you.